koutou katoa ko Vida Christeller tōku ingoa hi kaiwhakahare hoa hoa mahere a tōna aho. So my name is Vida Christeller. I am the Manager of City Design and Place Planning here at Wellington City Council. I grew up in Wellington but have spent many years overseas and returned 2 years ago to Wellington City Council to work with the team that is designing the future of the city, our city tomorrow. Both within my team is both the transport planning and the urban form planning departments of the city council. So it's a really great combination, I think, to make sure that we are both thinking about how we use our land and how we move around the city in more sustainable ways into the future. We've also got the heritage and the urban design teams together in this group, the group that we work in. Wellington is growing. We've got a growing population. We're expecting about 50 to 80,000 new inhabitants in the next 30 years. We've also got employment growth, which is a great place for the city to be. As Sarah talked about earlier, Wellington is a fantastic walking city, and one of the things it's really known for is its compact form. We've got the hills and the water, and in between we've got the city, which is vibrant and lively. We do, however, have areas that have been planned in the 20th century in a very car-centric approach. Here, at least, we've got footpaths, but we've also got areas of the city where there are not footpaths, and it only has been designed for this quarter-acre dream and the implications of that lifestyle and that car-centric planning, which has been. This is one of our sort of typical streets as you see it today in Wellington. We've sculpted the landscape and covered a lot of it in asphalt, and these are some of the problems we're also dealing with, along with in climate change, really focus on mode shift and more compact form, but it's also with the knowledge that we will have more severe weather events. How do we make sure that we're incorporating natural systems into our planning and going back towards more te ao Māori approaches to working with water and the land instead of engineering it so that it fits within other ways. So how do we take back, I'll have some examples from Copenhagen throughout this presentation. How do we take back the spaces we've given to park our transport tins to people and make sure that we've got people-centric planning, people-centric cities. David was just around this, but the MPS in urban development, of course, is a really ambitious and bold piece of legislation or direction that's come out of the government, and we're one of the first city, I think, to really try and introduce it through our spatial plan and understand what that will mean for the future of our city. It is very much focused on how we grow in New Zealand and that we become cities which are both dense, both in terms of sustainability and in terms of creating better environments for people of the future and being able to house everyone, especially that we need to. So as Sarah talked about, we had a very, very long meeting yesterday in Aotearoa, our Planning and Environment Committee, and there was two really monumentous pieces of decisions which got made, which are all about how our city is in the future. One was the spatial plan, which I'll talk a little bit more about, and the other, of course, was the Thorndon Quay Hut Road, where we on Thorndon Quay councillors have agreed to change all of our angle parking to parallel parking to ensure safety of cyclists and also create better walking environments along the footpath. Council has also been, within the last few months, also approved the new traffic bylaw, which changes that at the moment you can park on footpaths if you leave at least 1 metre clear space. That is now changing, so it now becomes illegal to park on footpaths, which is fantastic. So through the spatial plan, and I was hoping to have my colleague Orla here. She is unfortunately sick, so couldn't make it, but she has led this walking catchment typology work and created the methodology behind it, which now is being adopted around the region. And we've got many inquiries about how we've done it from different areas. What it has done is she started with a desktop review, looking into what literature there is around walking catchments, how you define them both here nationally and internationally. So they went into the GIS model. They have modelled both to and from stations, and they have modelled different walking speeds. So the ones in the final spatial plan, which now are changing, this is 5 minutes of these two stations, but will become a 10-minute catchment. So you can see over here in the final spatial plan, the walking catchments have been defined through both a desktop review of what are walking speeds, how do we measure it, what does it look like in terms of what should be counted and what shouldn't be counted within a walkable area. It has then been tested through, we've been Strava data, so we've worked with Strava and managed to, they've given us access to all of their Wellington data. People that use Strava, of course, are generally fitter people. So we've also then, we tested it by getting staff here at Wellington Council to map their walks for a few weeks as well, so that we had more normal people also walking and measuring these. So this red line is the average of a low speed walker and a moderate speed walker put together, and then we've also averaged out the distance going to and from the station, acknowledging our topography here in Wellington. It does include underpasses. It also includes some stairs. It includes the small informal tracks that we've got around Wellington. So it's quite a broad range of accessibility, and we acknowledge that it isn't accessible for everyone, all of these walking catchments, but through trying to average it out, we've tried to make it good, as good as we possibly can. And so this is what is then the basis of all of our walking catchment that has been included in the spatial plan. And as Sarah said earlier, 10-minute catchments around stations, and then 15 minutes around the central city. The spatial plan as well in itself is off the back of the Our City Tomorrow work and the scenarios where the majority, over 50% of the population came back and said that they want to see us continuing to build Wellington in a compact form and not spread out into greenfield areas. So this is the timeline just for planning for growth quickly. We have yesterday adopted the spatial plan, and towards the end of this year we are planning on coming back with a draft district plan. So it's a non-statutory draft. We'll talk about how we think we're then going to convert this spatial plan, which is sort of the blueprint for how we think we're going to develop the city, or how we think the city should develop the next 30 years, into the rule book, into the district plan, and with a proposed notified district plan in May next year is what we are aiming for, so that it can be implemented for the deadline of the NPS and urban development by August 2022. Sarah also touched on this. This is the regional land transport plan, which has a ambitious target of a 40% increase of mode shift in the next 30 years by 2030. And as Sarah also said, we haven't got exact targets for this, but we're definitely thinking about it, because what is Wellington's share of that in a regional context? Let's Get Wellington Moving is one of our major projects that we're using to do this. The purpose, the vision for Let's Get Wellington Moving is that we are a great harbour city, accessible to all, with attractive places, shared streets, and efficient local and regional journeys. Let's Get Wellington Moving is really moving forward at the moment. You will have seen, we talked about Thornike Hut Road. We've also just released the plan for the Golden Mile, where that's at the moment. As Sarah said, also the Covent Drive crossing, and we're doing pedestrian improvements throughout the city. Those are the first cabs off the rank. And towards the end of the year, looking towards having some more detail around some of the larger programs of work. At Wellington City Council, we've also been talking a lot internally about an idea, about building back better. So when we go in and we do maintenance, we do curb and channel renewals, where we're working on our streets, we think about what is the future state we want this to be in. So we're working, my team's the design team, and then we're working really closely with the transport team. We work together all the time. And so we're working through this, trying to say, okay, how do we, what do we want our streets to look like in the future, and making sure that's being done. One part of this is that we've got Tim Young from Hamilton to come in and help us map out accessibility routes throughout the city. So he's currently, you can download his app, which is the Smart Access, that has now been done for Aotearoa and Johnsonville, and we're going to be doing more in the new year. He's got 35 to 40 parameters which go into that, talking about how the tool is, the app is really for people with accessibility challenges, that they can then map out how they can get from A to B, but it's also a really useful tool for us as council to understand where we can make improvements as we are building back better. And generally when we're planning our city, he's part of our accessibility advisory group, which we meet with regularly. When we're looking at building back better, this is a project I was involved with in Copenhagen, where we took space from cars and we made 5-metre footpaths and 5-metre bike lanes to encourage that mode shift, and also create spaces. We all know that people will walk more and cycle more if they've got enjoyable journeys. So it's not just about creating the infrastructure, it's about creating an environment to make it enjoyable, and more enjoyable to walk and cycle than it is to take your car. And this is another photo. The weather also, we know Wellington, it's maybe not snow, but we've got a lot of wind and a lot of rain. So we need to make sure that it's also desirable, and that we can walk around our city no matter what the weather.